The rain hammered against the windshield like an unbroken string of warnings, each drop reminding Marcus Hale that he was running on nothing but fumes and stubbornness. He sat alone in his parked car outside the nearly empty train station on the outskirts of Denver, the glow of a flickering street lamp casting long shadows across the dash. It had been the kind of day that bruises a man quietly. The final meeting at work where he learned he was being let go, the silent apartment waiting for him afterward, and the lingering ache of a life he once believed would look very different by his mid-30s. He stared through the fogged-up glass, convinced the night had already delivered its final blow. But destiny, he would soon learn, often waits for a moment when a person feels utterly defeated. And then it steps forward, unexpected and undeniable. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the mysterious ways life can shift in a single moment, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. It truly helps the channel and keeps stories like this alive. Marcus had been sitting in that car for nearly half an hour, trying to summon the willpower to drive home. The world outside felt cold, muted, and indifferent. He rubbed his face with both hands, exhaling deeply, trying to release the weight of his exhaustion. Just when he leaned back and closed his eyes, the car door next to him was struck by something. Light, but urgent enough to snap him alert. He jolted upright and turned his head. There, illuminated by the street lamp, stood a woman in a pale blue coat, soaked from the rain, her dark hair clinging to her cheeks. In her arms was a small boy, no older than 3. The child's blonde hair was damp, his eyes wide, and he clung to her shoulder reluctantly, as though he wasn't quite sure whether the world could be trusted. She wasn't knocking on his window. She wasn't signaling for help. She was simply standing there, staring, her breath visible in the cold night air. And something about her expression told Marcus that whatever had brought her to him wasn't chance. It was something heavier, something stitched together by circumstance and desperation. He stepped out into the rain without thinking. She looked relieved at the sight of him, though he didn't know why. Marcus didn't recognize her, and she didn't seem to know him either. Yet she looked at him as if she had no one else in the world to turn to. She shifted the small boy on her hip and took a step closer, her voice trembling as she explained that her name was Rachel and that the toddler, Evan, needed help. Not medical help, not police help, something different, something deeper than a simple crisis. She had just escaped a difficult situation with someone she trusted far too long, and she had nowhere safe to go. Nowhere she believed her son would be shielded from the chaos she had been trying so desperately to outrun. Marcus listened, every word peeling away another layer of the loneliness that had settled on his shoulders throughout the evening. He didn't know Rachel's full story yet, but the urgency in her voice struck something human and instinctive in him. And so, with the rain still pouring, he offered what little he had, a dry car, a warm seat, and a willingness to drive somewhere safer. She hesitated at first, clutching Evan closer, then nodded and climbed into the passenger side, thanking him with a voice that cracked under the pressure of everything she'd been holding in. As Marcus drove, the city lights blurred like streaks of gold against the wet streets. At a red light, Evan looked up at Marcus with sleepy curiosity, and Marcus felt something shift in his chest, something soft but unsettling. He hadn't been around children much. He'd never had a family of his own, though he once imagined that path lay ahead of him. But that dream had crumbled over time, leaving behind a quiet emptiness he rarely acknowledged. Rachel directed him to a community shelter across town, a place she said she'd stayed briefly months before. As they arrived, Marcus noticed her hesitation. The shelter was busy, crowded, and filled with people weathered by life's sharpest blows. Rachel's shoulders tensed, and Evan hid his face against her neck. Marcus understood without needing explanation. She wasn't certain it was the right place for her son. When an employee informed her the family wing was full for the night, Marcus saw the heartbreak cross her face. Evan began to fuss quietly, exhausted and overwhelmed. That was the moment Marcus made a decision he never could have predicted an hour ago. He offered his apartment, not permanently, just for the night, someplace quiet and safe where they wouldn't have to worry about strangers or packed rooms or being turned away again in the morning. Rachel didn't answer immediately. She weighed the risks, the unknowns, the vulnerability of relying on someone she had just met. But Marcus wasn't pushing. He simply stood there holding an umbrella over them, waiting. Evan tugged at her sleeve, looking between them, and finally, she nodded. Back at Marcus's apartment, warmth greeted them like an overdue embrace. Marcus fetched towels, leftovers, and a soft blanket he hadn't used in months. Rachel fed Evan while Marcus prepared the living room couch for her. She apologized repeatedly for the inconvenience, but Marcus shrugged it off. Something about helping them felt strangely natural, like stepping into a story he didn't realize he'd been waiting for. Once Evan fell asleep in Rachel's arms, she finally opened up. She spoke in long, fragile sentences about the relationship she'd tried to salvage, the promises that dissolved, and the safety she needed to reclaim for her son. Her voice broke only once, when she admitted she feared Evan might grow up thinking instability was normal. Marcus felt a protective anger toward whoever had failed her, and a quiet admiration for the strength she carried despite everything pressing down on her. Over the next few days, as Rachel worked through local programs for support and housing, Marcus found himself rearranging his life without even realizing it. He bought breakfast for Evan in the mornings, helped Rachel make calls, and drove them to appointments. With each shared moment, something inside him thawed. His small, quiet apartment felt different now. Alive, filled with laughter from Evan's tiny feet pattering across the kitchen tiles, and conversation from Rachel that reminded him the world could still be good. He hadn't expected any of it. He hadn't expected to care so deeply about people who were strangers just days ago. And yet, every night when they left to stay at a transitional center nearby, Marcus found himself missing them the moment the door closed. The turning point came on a cold Saturday afternoon. Marcus was carrying groceries into the center for Rachel, and Evan ran toward him the moment he entered, arms up, calling his name in a burst of excitement only toddlers could manage. Marcus scooped him up, heart swelling, and Rachel watched from across the room, a soft smile touching her lips. Later, as they sat together on a bench outside, Rachel thanked him. Not the casual thank you of someone acknowledging a small favor, but the kind spoken with sincerity that carries a lifetime of gratitude. She told him he had changed everything, that he had stepped in at a moment where most people would have turned away. Marcus felt humbled, because in truth, they had changed him just as much. Weeks passed, and Rachel eventually found a small apartment in a safe neighborhood. Marcus helped her move, assemble furniture, and settle into the new space. He stayed for dinner that night, watching Evan bounce around the living room with a toy truck. The apartment glowed with a warm, fragile hope, the kind that grows quietly after surviving too much darkness. Marcus knew then that meeting Rachel and Evan wasn't an accident. It had been a moment of divine interruption, a shift in the universe's rhythm, pulling him out of isolation and into something meaningful. As the months progressed, their lives continued to intertwine. Marcus visited often, helping with errands, sharing meals, reading stories to Evan at bedtime. The bond among them deepened naturally, becoming something steady and unmistakable. Rachel's trust, once guarded, blossomed. Evan's attachment to Marcus grew into the pure, unfiltered love of a child who knew he was safe. One evening, as they walked through a quiet park at sunset, Rachel slipped her hand into Marcus's. It wasn't a dramatic gesture. It was simple, sincere, and unmistakably full of promise. Marcus knew then that fate didn't always shout when it changed your life. Sometimes it whispered. Sometimes it stepped out of the rain carrying a small boy. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps these heartfelt stories reach more people who need them. Before you leave, comment below. Do you believe certain people enter our lives exactly when we need them most?